All right, so are you ready to dive into a story? One that is both unsettling and oddly fascinating. We're going to be taking a look at the life and crimes of Nannie Doss, better known as the Giggling Granny.
The Giggling Granny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our main source for this deep dive is the Wikipedia article. And from what I've read, this woman was a serial killer with a truly disturbingly cheerful persona.
Hmm.
You know, it makes you wonder, how could someone who committed such horrific acts be known for giggling?
It is a perplexing question,
Hmm.
and one that really speaks to the complexities of the human psyche. But to understand this, let's start at the beginning. Nannie Doss was born in Alabama in 1905, and her childhood was, well, anything but idyllic.
Right.
In the Wikipedia article, you'll find details about her controlling and abusive father, the forced labor she endured on the family farm, and a severe head injury she suffered at just 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
Any of these factors alone could have a lasting impact. But combined, they paint a rather bleak picture of her formative years.
Yeah. And that head injury, it is especially interesting. The article mentions it caused chronic headaches, blackouts, and persistent depression, which she later blamed for her instability.
Hmm.
It really makes you think about how childhood trauma can leave such deep scars.
Absolutely. And it's not uncommon for serial killers to have experienced significant trauma in their early lives.
Mhm.
These experiences can shape their worldview, their relationships, and their ability to empathize with others.
Right, so in the Wikipedia article, it notes that Nanny's father was incredibly strict, especially with his daughters.
Yeah.
He forbade makeup, fancy clothes, and even simple things like dances or social events.
Wow.
It seems almost as if this deprivation fueled her later obsession with romance magazines and her constant pursuit of love. Do you think she was trying to compensate for the social life she was denied as a young girl?
It's a very compelling theory.
Yeah.
Deprivation in one area can certainly lead to overcompensation in another. And that brings us to her first marriage. At the age of 16, to Charlie Braggs, a coworker from the linen factory where she worked.
Oh, wow.
This was essentially a shotgun wedding, orchestrated by her father. But even this escape wasn't what Nannie had hoped for.
Right, because Charlie came with his own baggage, a domineering mother.
Yeah,
The Wikipedia entry paints a picture of a truly overbearing mother-in-law who constantly interfered in their lives. It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
indeed. They had 4 daughters between 1923 and 1927.
Okay.
But tragedy struck when 2 of the girls died
Oh, no.
from suspected food poisoning. This is where we begin to see the first shadows of suspicion falling on Nannie.
And the article mentions that Charlie wasn't exactly a model husband either. He suspected Nannie of infidelity, and ironically, he wasn't faithful himself. Ultimately, he took their eldest daughter and left, abandoning Nannie with their newborn. He even admitted later that he was terrified of her.
That's interesting. It's fascinating how this early stage of her life already reveals a pattern. Nannie seems drawn to men who are troubled in some way, whether it's alcoholism, infidelity, or even criminal behavior.
So not surprisingly, Nannie didn't stay single for long. In 1929, she married Robert Franklin Harrelson, and wouldn't you know it, he was an alcoholic with a criminal record.
Oh.
This marriage lasted for 16 years, which is actually quite a stretch for Nannie considering her track record. But these years were far from peaceful.
You're right. There's a particularly disturbing incident detailed in the Wikipedia article involving Nannie's grandson, Robert, who was born to her daughter, Melvina, in 1943.
Oh.
The baby tragically died under mysterious circumstances while in Nannie's care.
Oh, no.
Melvina even claimed to have seen her mother with a hat pin near the child,
What?
which sends chills down your spine just reading it.
That detail about the hat pin is really unsettling. It suggests a level of premeditation and cold-bloodedness that's really hard to comprehend.
Yeah,
And of course, we can't overlook the fact that Nannie had conveniently taken out a life insurance policy on little Robert and collected a tidy sum after his death.
it's a chilling detail that raises serious questions about Nannie's motives and her capacity for cruelty.
And shortly after the incident with her grandson, Harrelson met an untimely end. Nannie claimed he had raped her, and the following day he died after drinking his corn whiskey, which was laced with rat poison. Do you think this was Nannie's way of enacting revenge for the abuse she allegedly suffered?
It's certainly possible. The timeline is incredibly suspicious.
Yeah.
And it fits with the emerging pattern we've observed.
Yeah.
Nannie finding herself in a difficult or abusive relationship
Right.
and then resorting to drastic measures. This incident also marks a turning point in her story, as it's the first time we see a clear connection between her actions and a potential financial motive.
It's like a perfect storm of tragedy and malice. And sadly, this is just the beginning of Nannie's murderous rampage. She went on to have 3 more husbands, Arlie Lanning, Richard Morton, and Samuel Doss. And let's just say their fates were not much brighter.
It's a chilling reminder that this seemingly ordinary woman harbored a dark secret, a capacity for violence that would claim the lives of many more people in the years to come. So it seems as though after Robert Harrelson's death, Nannie Doss wasted no time in seeking out her next husband.
Yeah, you're telling me. According to the Wikipedia article, she didn't let grass grow under her feet. She quickly found husband number 3, Arlie Lanning, through, of all things, a Lonely Hearts column.
Wow, a Lonely Hearts column.
Yeah. They met in North Carolina and got married just 3 days later. Whirlwind romances seem to be a bit of a theme with Nannie, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's as if she was constantly seeking validation and affection, perhaps trying to fill a void left by her troubled childhood. But much like her previous husbands, Lanning had his own issues. The article describes him as an alcoholic and a womanizer, a pattern that's starting to feel a bit too familiar. Interestingly, though, this time it was Nannie who would disappear for months at a time.
It's almost a role reversal, isn't it? But when she was home, the article says she played the doting housewife perfectly. So when Lanning died of what was believed to be heart failure, nobody suspected a thing.
Well, nobody, except perhaps the insurance company. Shortly after Lanning's death, their house, which had conveniently been left to his sister, burned down, and Nannie collected the insurance money.
Oh, wow.
And if that wasn't enough, Lanning's mother also died in her sleep while Nannie was taking care of her. It's hard to believe these were just unfortunate coincidences. What do you think?
Let's just say my skepticism radar is definitely going off.
For
It's like
sure.
everywhere Nannie went, tragedy seemed to follow. But she didn't stop there, did she?
Not at all. Husband number 4 entered the scene, Richard L. Morton from North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
They married in 1952, and while he wasn't a drinker like her previous husbands, the article states that he was an adulterer.
So not exactly a saint himself, but that didn't stop Nannie from adding to her list of victims. Before she got around to poisoning Morton, she also poisoned her own mother, Louisa, who had come to live with them.
It's a chilling reminder that Nannie's murderous tendencies weren't limited to the men in her life. Even her own family members weren't safe. It really makes you question the depth of her capacity for empathy, or lack thereof.
It's a disturbing thought. And what about Morton? Did he meet the same fate as her other husbands?
He did. The article says that Morton died 3 months after Louisa in May of 1953. Another mysterious death, another insurance payout for Nannie. It's becoming a very predictable and very sinister pattern.
You know, it's almost like she was treating marriage like some sort of twisted game where the prize was a dead husband and an insurance payout.
That's a rather morbid analogy. But I see your point. There's a definite sense of detachment from the emotional consequences of her actions.
Yeah.
It's as if she saw her husbands as disposable, merely pawns in her game of manipulation and deceit.
And her grand prize was still waiting in the wings, right? Husband number 5, Samuel Doss. He's the one who finally led to her downfall. What can you tell us about him?
Well, in June of 1953, Nannie married Samuel Doss, a Nazarene minister from Tulsa, Oklahoma. He was a widower who had lost his family in a tornado. A tragic backstory that might have made him seem like the perfect, unsuspecting target for Nannie.
Except for one crucial detail, right?
Yeah.
The Wikipedia article mentions that Samuel disapproved of Nannie's beloved romance novels.
That's right. It seems that Samuel, a devout and religious man, clashed with Nannie's more frivolous interests. This little detail highlights the fundamental incompatibility between them. Samuel was a man of faith, while Nannie was driven by more worldly desires, including, it seems, a significant financial motive.
So tell us, what happened to Samuel? Did he meet the same end as the others?
He did, but his death was ultimately what brought Nannie's web of deceit crashing down. In September of 1954, Samuel was hospitalized with flu-like symptoms that turned out to be a severe digestive tract infection. He was treated and released, but just a week later, he died. However, this time there was a crucial difference. Samuel's doctor was suspicious and ordered an autopsy.
And I'm guessing that autopsy revealed something quite incriminating.
It did. The autopsy revealed a large amount of arsenic in Samuel's system. The game was finally up for Nannie Doss.
Wow.
She was arrested, and her reign of terror came to an abrupt end.
It seems like her insatiable greed finally caught up with her. If she hadn't been in such a rush to collect on those insurance policies, she might have gotten away with it for even longer. But, as they say, the truth always has a way of coming out, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And once the authorities started digging into Nannie's past, they uncovered a truly horrifying truth. She confessed to killing not just her husbands, but also her mother, her sister, her grandson, and even a mother-in-law. 11 victims in total, spanning over 3 decades.
11 victims. Wow.
It's a staggering number that really puts the scope of her crimes into perspective.
It's mind-boggling how she managed to operate under the radar for so long, maintaining this facade of a harmless, even cheerful grandmother.
Right.
The nickname Giggling Granny takes on a whole new, sinister meaning in light of these revelations.
It's a truly disturbing juxtaposition. But the question remains, what drove her to commit these heinous acts? Was it the trauma of her childhood, untreated mental illness, or was she simply a cold-blooded killer who derived pleasure from the suffering of others?
Those are some weighty questions, and unfortunately the Wikipedia article doesn't provide any definitive answers.
Yeah.
But it does offer some intriguing clues that we can explore further. Okay, so we've been piecing together this puzzle. That is Nannie Doss, the Giggling Granny.
Right.
A chilling tale of deceit, murder, and a shocking lack of remorse. We've learned about her troubled upbringing, her string of unfortunate husbands, and the chilling methods she used to dispatch her victims. But now, let's try to delve into the why. What could possibly drive someone to commit such horrific acts?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And unfortunately, this Wikipedia article that we're looking at doesn't offer us a simple answer. Nannie Doss remains an enigma even all these years later.
Yeah.
But we can examine the evidence and explore some possible explanations for her behavior.
Well, the article makes it clear that she had a really rough start in life. We talked about her abusive father and the severe head injury she suffered as a child, which led to years of headaches, blackouts, and chronic depression. Could those early traumas have played a role in shaping her into the killer she became?
It's certainly a possibility worth considering. Trauma, particularly in childhood, can have a profound and lasting impact on the brain. It can affect emotional regulation, impulse control, and even a person's capacity for empathy. In fact, a history of significant trauma is a common thread you'll find in the backgrounds of many serial killers.
And then there's the pattern of her victims. It's striking how many of the men she targeted were, well, let's just say less than ideal partners, alcoholics, womanizers, even criminals. It's almost like she was drawn to troubled individuals.
That's an astute observation. Some experts believe that this pattern could point to a subconscious desire, on Nannie's part, to exert control or even seek revenge against men who reminded her of her abusive father.
So in a sense, she was replaying her childhood trauma, but this time she was the one in control.
Precisely. By choosing partners who were vulnerable or had their own demons, Nannie may have felt a sense of power she lacked in her earlier life. And by ultimately eliminating them, she was, in a twisted way, righting the wrongs of her past.
But we can't forget about the financial motive. The article highlights how she often collected insurance money after the deaths.
Right.
Was it simply a case of cold, hard cash driving her actions?
While financial gain was certainly a factor, I hesitate to say that money was her sole motivation. Remember, she also killed family members, including her own mother and sister, who offered no financial reward.
You're right. It seems like something darker, something more psychologically complex was at play.
Exactly. Some psychologists speculate that Nannie may have suffered from a form of psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder, conditions characterized by a lack of empathy, remorse, and a blatant disregard for social norms.
That would certainly explain her seemingly cheerful demeanor and her ability to compartmentalize the horrific acts that she was committing. It's like she detached herself completely from the emotional consequences of her actions.
That detachment is a hallmark of these disorders. And remember her obsession with those romance novels. Some theorists suggest that they provided her with a fantasy world, an escape from the mundane reality of her life.
Maybe she was trying to live out those idealized love stories, but in a warped and ultimately destructive way.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
That line between fantasy and reality becoming so blurred that it leads to such tragic consequences.
Well, regardless of the reasons behind her actions, Nannie Doss's story serves as a potent reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary people. It's a case that continues to fascinate and horrify, leaving us with more questions than answers.
Indeed. The tale of the Giggling Granny remains a disturbing chapter in the annals of true crime, forcing us to confront the unsettling truth that evil can wear many faces, even that of a seemingly harmless grandmother. It also reminds us that the human psyche is a complex and often unfathomable thing.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's consider this. If Nannie Doss were alive today, would modern forensic science and psychology have caught her sooner? Or would she have continued to weave her web of deception, leaving a trail of victims in her wake?
It's a question that's both fascinating and disturbing. Unfortunately, we can only speculate. But one thing is certain. The case of Nannie Doss continues to intrigue and challenge our understanding of the human capacity for both love and cruelty.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life and crimes of Nannie Doss. We hope it's left you with a renewed appreciation for the complexities of the human mind and a chilling reminder that even the most unassuming individuals can harbor dark secrets.